This morning on BRN Lifestyle, food prices are at their highest levels in over a year. Joining me now to help break it all down, Dr. David Anderson is with Texas A&M University. David, Dr. Anderson, so great to see you. Thanks for joining us on the program this morning.
Thanks for having me with you.
How'd the semester go, David?
Pretty good. We're almost done. Thank goodness. But I got a good bunch of students. I teach a graduate course here in the fall semester, and I got some smart kids in there, and they're a pleasure to work with.
Well, I'm sure they will do well, our future economists and ag policymakers. David, I want to check in with you on food prices, and we're recording this early December. The show may not come out until a little bit, maybe a week or so from today. How are we doing with our global food prices? Are prices starting to come down? Are they going up or staying the same?
Well, I'd probably argue if we look at the meat side of things, which is where I spend more of my time, I think if we looked at retail prices as that data comes out, the data would show that prices are coming down. But they're still, for the most part, higher than they were a year ago. That's,
Mm-hmm.
for example, pork prices are lower, beef prices are a little bit higher, but the direction of them is coming down. And I think one of the things that's important to recognize is that some of this is a seasonal change. We tend to see prices, for example, for beef decline into the fall. And it's really, as for us as consumers, it's what we eat when we eat it. And so we see ground beef prices decline into the fall because we're past the summer months of, cooking hamburgers outside, and that adds to some demand. We get some higher prices this time of the year on stuff like ribeyes, your standing rib roast, your prime rib that are really a holiday kind of Christmas item. So we get some of those prices higher, but the overall seasonal trend is for lower prices this time of the year, and we're seeing that. It doesn't really change the fact that the overall price level is pretty high, and so that's still with us, even though prices are coming down.
And David, what does this mean for the restaurants that we go to? You had informed us, educated us, I should say, on supermarkets and some of the local and national chains. But what does this mean for McDonald's, Arby's? I'm trying to think of, it's been a while since I've been to a fast food restaurant, but does this mean that their prices will come down?
Well, I think that's one of the interesting things. It may have been a while for a lot of us since we've been to a fast food place, and that's one of the thing over the last couple of years is that, their costs have gone up much more rapidly than, say, grocery store prices. So restaurants have been under some pressure, just with higher costs for everything they put into putting that plate or that bag in front of you. And so, I think those pressures are still there. I think one of the interesting things is, for example, it's been in the news a lot. The McDonald's has this chicken Big Mac, and
Mm.
so we've had people, the chicken sandwich wars of a couple of years ago, things like that. Now they've taken their classic Big Mac, but they're using a chicken breast in it instead. And so we might think of that as a couple of different things. As one is that may make their raw ingredients less expensive because the chicken being cheaper than the ground beef. And so they're trying new things, and they tested this several years ago. They've rolled it out nationally for a limited time now, but this is, I think this is indicative of some, really trying some new things. Can they affect their margins? Can they roll out something that gets consumers excited to get them in the store and try something new? And so, I think we see this across the board.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a lot of competition between the restaurants, fast food restaurants. I mean, I think you have to be agile to deal with these prices. David, one thing in the news, and I know you cover this with your students, I'd be interested to hear what they think. But tariffs have come up. We've talked about it with Jane King as it relates to the stock market, the potential with the stock market and the economy. How do you take the news about potential tariffs with Canada, China, some of our existing trading partners? What does that mean to our food prices, or does it mean anything?
Well, it's I try to take a step back and think about this is because we got a lot of rhetoric going on.
Yeah.
Yet we're not there to the point where something has happened yet. And so, and so I tend to think, well, let's wait and see here what really happens. But it's also pretty complicated. So we can talk about tariffs, yet then what happens is what happens from other countries in retaliation and their what we call retaliatory tariffs. And that's when it's going to really get complicated because we can think about an item like, for instance, avocados. That's been a hot item for a long time, growing consumer demand in the US for guacamole, avocados. We get the bulk of those from Mexico. And so if you put a tariff on that, well, gosh, you're going to get higher prices. That's
Yeah.
the way it is. But we look at an item like, for instance, beef, where there's all these different cuts and products from beef. It's all beef, but there's all the way from high value filet mignon steaks, stuff. We export some high value stuff. We export some low value things like livers that we just don't eat a lot of that anymore in the US. But we're actually importing more beef volume today than we're exporting. But about 70% of that is lean beef trimmings to go into ground beef. So our cow herd's the smallest since 1961 in the US, which means we don't have a lot of old cows going to market to turn into hamburger. So we got to get some more of that in to meet everything that we want as American consumers. And so we're both importing and exporting. And that makes it complicated. And, what really happens out of all of this is, I think, still yet to come. We'll see what's just rhetoric and what turns out to be sort of real.
So, David, will you be looking at January 20th, the swearing in date, as kind of the, just from a policy perspective? You mentioned rhetoric. Is it at that point, and we've got a new Congress coming in January 3rd, but you're going to probably look to see what the impact's going to be, what actually gets implemented?
Yeah, I think so. And the timing of those things, what products they're on, is it truly blanket across the board everything? How do other countries respond? Is that a blanket across the board everything, or are those more targeted? I could think too, the last time we went through this, we export a lot of corn and soybean meal. And so those are animal feeds that we're exporting. And so, tariffs against those drive down prices. And if we were going to look at agriculture, we've got some extremely low prices for corn, soybeans, cotton, things like that. These big bulk agricultural commodities that are a huge part of our agricultural economy. And the potential there is to drive down those prices even more. And we have a lot of farmers in some real trouble with these very low prices.
David, I don't know. Do you ever watch the show Yellowstone? Are you familiar with that show?
Yeah.
And so how do you think, I know John Dutton, the character, is now deceased on the program, but how do you think he and the Yellowstone would react to everything that's going on in terms of tariffs? I mean, he is probably the largest ranch in that world in Montana. So how do you think he would react to all this talk? You think he would give that grizzled, we're going to send Beth and Rip in? I mean, what would they do?
Well, I got to tell you, I gave up after about season 2. I mean, it just, I just gave up. But I have used Yellowstone, a couple of scenes from that in my class, in my graduate class. That there's some couple of things that happen in about season 2 that are really applicable to my ag policy class. So that's been kind of fun. The students get a real charge out of it. I don't know. He'd probably be all for tariffs, I guess, and
protect the Yellowstone and protect his herd, right? I mean,
it'd be more like protecting himself and forget everybody else.
Yeah. Well, I have watched the show with my wife, and I know my mom, who's watching our show today, loves the show, and her boyfriend. So I think it's fun in theory. I guess we'll have to talk to John Dutton in the netherworld because he's now deceased because Kevin Costner left the show. David, we're going to have to leave it there. Wishing you a very happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I'm going to say Merry Christmas because I think you can say that now. You enjoy yourself, and we'll have you back on the program again very soon.
Well, thanks. Merry Christmas to you too.
And don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, The Morning Polls, for all the news in one place. Details, of course, at our website. And we're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe. Keep on saving. Don't forget, roll with the changes.